Good morning. Very good to see you all this morning. Thank you for joining us both in person here in Monastery, Zendo, and online. And since it's been recommended that I say a few things to people so far as communication, that if it's just left up to me, I probably will forget it. So I'm going to read this. So first of all, thank you for your participation. I think I said that right. For showing up here and at the book studies. We have, I don't know how many book studies are we doing in a week's time?
Well, altogether, you go to at least 10.
10 book studies. So we're 10 different Dharma texts that we're looking at, and they're all over the place. They go way back in time and current things that are being written today and studied. So, and thank you for helping us with technology. As you know about technology, we need all the help we can get. For helping us financially, this is not, it might look like we're providing a service or a product, but not exactly so. It's not like the commercial situation in the West. It's not quite that dependable. Not that that's even dependable anymore. So I just want to ask for your help, So I don't know, I've been told that I teach 2 or 3 times a day or something like that.
2 to 4.
2 to 4 times a day, somewhere, either in a book study or giving a talk. And my energy, I don't know where it comes from, but I certainly don't generate it. Because if it was about me, I'd just stay home. But I can't help but come here. So I don't know how that shows up to you. Maybe it shows up as I'm trying to get rich. Not working so far. We're very energized by your participation. I'm especially energized by that. Sometimes I can feel really, really down and low, but if I meet with Sangha or with the community that are interested in the Dharma, I get energy from somewhere. I don't mean to be some kind of mystical thinking here or magical stuff. I'm not talking about that, just energy. It just comes, go up, and I have the energy that I need to stand up and present the Dharma as I understand it, and as will possibly be helpful to you. So, did I say enough? Yeah. You can have your notes back. So, today's Dharma talk is titled Emotions. You know about those? Emotions are just consciousness, but we tend to personalize them and use them to push, pull, support, elaborate on that part of the consciousness that thinks there is somebody. You know, when you walk through a door and you run into somebody, your old friend Jim, or someone, that person's identity illusion and your identity illusion come together, and the chemistry behind that is untraceable. Goes back thousands of years, just to use a conventional indication of space in terms of time. You cannot find the source of any of that. Have you ever noticed how sometimes you meet somebody, you feel like you've known them forever? You meet somebody else and you never want to see them again. It's not that they've done anything wrong, it's just their energy. There's something about that that's unnameable. You just know you can't interact with that person very well. Now, if you're on this path and you've received the vow to be with all things, to save all beings, you're probably going to take another look at that rather than just run away and think, I don't care for them. They're this or that. You're probably going to try to understand what is it that's happening between you. You will do what? You will return to consciousness. You'll be returning to what your awareness is doing in that context, whether it's across the kitchen table with your spouse, or with your children, with your grandmother, your mother, your next door neighbor, any of that. We have to work with consciousness. This is not about right and wrong, but the ego mind gets its stability, which is very, very situational and temporary, out of grasping at something right and shoving something away wrong. And sometimes for some people, those are just the opposite. Very, very painful to watch in the world, all the confusion in the world. And you can find, as you heard me say several times, you can find someone that makes total sense, whether it's a politician or a psychologist or a philosopher or whomever, or your therapist. And yet, if there's no mind training there, they've never spent any time at all just watching their mind come and go, they are going to be dependent on what? The objects that arise in mind, called concepts, ideas, judgments, evaluations, even prejudice. Prejudice is very powerful, especially when the person who is functioning out of that just thinks it's the truth. You don't know that they have an opinion. Consciousness only. The only reason I'm here is not to get you to join Buddhism or to be a monk or I can't be too concerned about what you do. What I am concerned about is what you're aware of. Be aware, please. You don't have to join me. You don't have to write me a letter or text or don't do anything. Send me money, yes. In other words, what I just asked, if you can support financially, please do. But I don't want to just rotate into that because I'm not here to make money. If we were here to make money, I wouldn't be doing this. This is not a good idea for fundraising. So, but what I'm encouraging you to do is see that what arises in the mind stream is just consciousness. There, if you personalize it, then you, as Vasubandhu said in his 30 verses, he spelled it out very, very specifically. Read that 500 times. Don't try to understand it. If you try to understand it, you've just left what has been presented to you in terms of your ideas about it. This is the very nature of confusion. It's the very nature of the elaboration that we call prejudice or illusion, yes, but also that other I word, ignorance. It's quite the rascal. It's very wily. We can't get a hold of it because we want to try to fix it, correct it, do something with it, and you can't. It has to be done with consciousness, and consciousness does not have, if it's working as consciousness only, does not have a credential for success and failure. So you're more ego. It feels more out on a limb. That's why you may need a teacher. You may not. You may be just fine doing this by reading Dharma books or not. So thinking also is just consciousness. Thoughts, just another form of emotion is thoughts, emotions, things that are arising in consciousness, similar to memory and other kinds of images that arise. Please just receive them. You can't just decide to do that with the intellect because the intellect will get in the way and analyze and tabulate and see, are you receiving? Are you receiving? Are you doing okay? Are you getting better at this? Are you less obscured by your thoughts, opinions, feelings, and so on? You can't evaluate it. If you do, then it's circular. The world is circular. We have examples of it since a million years ago when we first showed up. First thing you saw was something going in a circle. It's called the moon. Goes around and around and around. What's that other big ball of fire? Oh, actually, the moon isn't fire, is it? It's a dark question. Is that a shrug? Okay. But we're anxious to name something, pick something, categorize something, put it here and put it there because of our materialistic approach to not only psychology, but to materialism for that matter. How to find out where the wheelbarrow is so you can work on the garden this spring. All kinds of materiality is very important. We're not trying to get rid of any of that. As it says in the Zen tradition, you probably heard it before awakening, chop wood, carry water. After awakening, chop wood, carry water. The relative situation, as long as there's a human form, you're going to be here. You need to work with that. We're not trying to get rid of that and move to a mountaintop. Yes.
Shadow bowing. With that idea, the chop wood, carry water, is the chopping and the carrying any different before and after?
Fundamentally not. Fundamentally. In other words, just in consciousness, no, it's just forms rising in consciousness. But if you're picking and choosing, if you're looking for credit, if you're looking to get ahead, if you're trying to see if you're becoming more enlightened, one of the ways that we do that is to compare ourselves to the way other people are functioning. It's very easy to judge other people and elevate ourselves slightly. Sometimes that's called pride. It's very hard to see that. Someone who's really full of pride will not know it. If you know it, then it starts to come apart. Go ahead.
Shadow bowing. I think I'm asking around my confusion with that phrase because I've taken it to mean chop wood, carry water, and then after awakening, I'll chop better and carry better. But that's
I didn't say that. Is that what you're thinking?
that's what I was thinking.
Wrong. Well, I'm not, when I say wrong, I'm being silly, but I'm just saying that may show up, but there won't be an attachment to it. You may actually be aware that you seem to be more present, or there seems to be more presence about what you're doing and less daydreaming about other things when you're reaching for the axe. So when you're doing something, but there's no credential, nothing, you don't leave that for some kind of a gaining idea about it, how you're, ticking off all the things that you're getting better at because you're so aware.
Shadow bowing, a different area. You've said in the past, like with CCC, if we don't do that first one, if we don't communicate, we really can't do the other two.
Yes, communicate. What's the other one?
Cooperate
Cooperate
and collaborate.
and collaborate. The last two are not going to work so well. They might work, but they're lopsided because it's about one person getting ahead of the other or something like that, or getting their way. So communicate is very important. And then what else did I say about communication?
Listen.
Listen a lot.
Shadow bowing. So I'm looking at that scenario you brought up earlier where we just meet someone and I've had it where it's just immediately violent. There's a violent connection with this person.
Yes.
And it seems like we can't even start at the first C. So where do we start there?
Well, you might not. It's not about changing anything or being different. It's about just being aware of what's happening. If you're a person who practices awareness, who meditates, whether you're a student of mine or not a student of anyone, or just or a meditator, whatever arises in the mind stream, my understanding of this is just receive it. And so if you meet, you've been meditating and trying to find a way to respond as clear as I can, as my understanding is of that. And if you meet someone, just be aware of the feelings that kind of come off from that person or seem to be from other, and be responsible. Those are your feelings. No one ever gives you feelings. No one ever pours feelings into you. They're always yours, but it's dependently arisen. So that is your opportunity rather than try to go into the merchandising mentality or manipulation of trying to not feel this way. Look how valuable that is to meet someone and suddenly by talking to that person for a few minutes, the negativity starts to rise. That's your opportunity to actually, my way of teaching meditation and action, which is not about being aware of what happens, but is because that's more about a credential. Just be with all things, whatever shows up, that's how you're not separate from that. You're not over here being aware of that. You are the scummy feeling that's arising rather than projecting it on them. But if you see that you're projecting it on them, realize that's a projection. You can go into the conceptual area and think about that a little bit. Realize that you're protecting yourself by thinking about what's happening, thinking about what you're feeling. You're leaving the feeling that is available to you. You could actually just feel that feeling. But the ego mind, if that's not been dealt with or isn't being dealt with in a daily practice, that ego is going to come in and protect you from that situation. So you start to believe that and you start to react or respond in such a way that is not CCC for sure. Yes.
Shadow bowing. I'm thinking of just two real practical examples lately where I get really triggered and I'm convinced I can't really do anything but spout off. So into situations, I left the room for a few minutes or hung up the phone and called the person back later when I calm down. Is there something being missed there by having to step out or remove myself?
So you're not to pick on you personally, but everyone has their own way of dealing with thinking and emotions. Some people are extremely emotionally based, so much so that if someone who is not that way talks to them, they just think they're confused. They're not confused at all. That's a projection. Person's was functioning just fine with all its emotional dynamics going this way and that way and this way. So your situation of coming together with someone and saying that this is too intense, I need to take a break from this. My words, not yours. But yeah, you can do it. Just look at your watch, say, I got to get out of here for a while. I'll see you in a few minutes, or I'll be back. You could, I'm going to say it very bluntly, you can lie. It's for others who could say, I got an appointment, rather than sit there and try to figure out some way to make your situation be more workable. Be respectful of the confusion. That isn't going to show up formulaic. There's no standard for this. That's why it's so hard. We always look for standards, and we're given the 16 precepts, and we're giving all of the the ethics stuff, which is, I'm not saying it's not helpful, but obeying anything. Don't obey anything. Don't obey me. Don't obey anything. Don't believe your thoughts or your emotions. Go ahead, sir.
Shadow bowing is needing to step out like that, a way of meeting ourselves where we're at.
I would know if I don't know if I'd go so far as to get a conclusion out of it. Somewhat. You're just working with your own mind and you met that person and you're having difficulty in that. You step out of that if I'm following you. But I wouldn't necessarily go to, is that correct or incorrect, or should I or shouldn't I? Anytime you do that, you're going in a circle. Just in the one circle loves another circle.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Straight lines don't get much affection from circles. The straight line is right into the darkness. That's the path of the Bodhisattva, as I see it, or as I don't see it. If there are further questions around that, I can respond, or I can continue to talk about consciousness.
Bowing. Can we see that emotions are just consciousness in the midst of them feeling so personal?
Yes. It is possible. Go ahead.
Does seeing that take away any of the energy of it feeling so personal?
Probably not. That's why it's so hard, because you don't get the credential from it. It could even feel worse. But if you're on the path and you have a teaching, you have a teacher, you have a community, you can use that. That's why I often say when people come to book study, they get irritated with the way some people study, or they get irritated. The other direction that people go is, I can understand this material. Dogen makes no sense to me. And this is a different kind of study. This isn't a college exam. There will be no test. The test that is out there is indescribable. Not even a test. But that's why I've been telling people for years, you've heard me say, this doesn't matter if you understand this. Doesn't matter. Really does not. I mean that. I'm not just joking. I'm saying study. I studied the 30 verses since the 1970s, and it was forever before I actually started to get an understanding of that, where I could even say 3 words about it. Very difficult material because it is so very, very conceptual and precise, and it goes right at your beliefs and ideas and so on. So the area you're talking about there is the area of getting a credential or some kind of oh yeah, I'm doing better because of this, that. Is that what you're asking about?
Kind of. It often looks like if I'm judging someone or feeling bad about something, there's a slight inkling that
Like what?
there's a slight
Inkling.
that it's not, that it's some sort of protection or
Okay.
something, but it still feels like I just opt for the judgment.
So very important. So don't correct that. That's awareness, to notice. That's how it's done. You actually have to start to be responsible for that. You're judging, you're pushing on something. You actually are aware of the passion, aggression, and ignorance showing up as judging someone or being down on some particular person. At the same time, you have that other little commentary off to one side that's saying, well, I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be judging this person. Or maybe it's the other way around. They have this coming. I should get more people to be against them. Know about that one. Yeah. Again, I don't want to back up too far away from the concepts, the ideas, and the actual structure of what you're experiencing, but you can back away into concepts about it. If it helps you proceed into what you're aware of, you can go back into that. You can use the 3 poisons, other kinds of teachings. Everything's consciousness only. You can use that just temporarily and then go back and feel the texture and the depth of the emotion. It can be very, very uncomfortable and painful. Well,
Does taking responsibility for the judgment mean apologizing for it?
so apologizing, sometimes it's very situational. So sometimes you might want to say that or need to say that. But less is probably better. Because sometimes that apology is about you wanting to get rid of some kind of culpability for being wrong or something, rather than actually truly wanting to let the person know that you did not mean to hurt them or offend them. Or you're apologizing for that. I'm sorry I hurt you or offended you. Apologize once. If you do it once, then it's probably pretty genuine, more than likely. If you continue to look for forgiveness, then it's more about that part of the consciousness we call ego.
Thank you.
Hogan bowing.
Again,
The second peer precept is do no harm.
yes,
Does do no harm mean reducing outflows, reducing negativities that may hurt other people? How does emotions play into that bowing?
I think it does mean reducing outflows, or sometimes I just say, just don't get rid of the emotion. If you're enraged or really upset with somebody, don't get rid of the emotion. But just don't hook up your vocal cords or your texting finger. Don't do it. It makes some sense to you. Just back off them a little bit. You don't really have to do that, because that is definitely an outflow. And what is an outflow? It's trying to get rid of something that's very, very uncomfortable and abrasive, and we don't want that. And so we see there's some kind of culpability over here, some kind of blame, so we say, give it to them. But you could actually receive that on behalf of that person. At the same time, you know that they're screwing up, or they have done something that was unskillful, or on and on and on. But you could actually just, as my mother would say, hold your horses. We didn't have any horses.
Hogan bowing, it's when you say that, it's as though one can stop causing other people to have emotion. Can we do that?
Pardon me?
Can we stop?
You can't, but to endeavoring to do that, if you're just really sincerely endeavoring to do that, then seeing that you can't do it, that area, and this is very important, it's the practice. It's not the success story about, oh, I've suddenly conquered my 3 poisons. It's when you see that you cannot do that, that part of the consciousness that is in a hideout. And sometimes those hideouts are covered with jewels and all kinds of wonderful displays. And don't worry about this. Everything back here is just wonderful, and we're protecting that. But that's ego, and it shows up differently with each person. Some people are very sneaky about covering up their self-centeredness. So what I was getting to there is seeing you can't do that. That really, use a literal image there, eats away at the underpinning of ego. Because it's seeing that you're not going to be able to control this, and ego would like to be on board and be the person who's enlightened, or be the person who's very kind and loving, or is probably on the 7th bhumi by now. We've been practicing for so many years. I'm not sure what bhumi I'm on, but pretty sure it's pretty high. So there is no those stages on the path. Everything is meant to encourage you to practice. It's not meant as some kind of a structure where you're on which stair step you're on. There's no way to know that. It's consciousness only. And so to come back to what seems to be your inquiry is just watch the disturbance, which the disturbance in this case would be seeing how you can't help but hit that computer key. I love you. Well, slipped. We take that back. So I mean, it's like that, and being a little dopey here, but it's like that. It's an area where by having a spiritual path, having an awareness practice, and having a sangha, having a teaching, having a teacher, you can eventually settle down and begin to look at the fundamental discrepancy, the fundamental misunderstanding, which is no one here. Identity is a misunderstanding. If you see this, you'll look out and still see people. You'll look in the mirror and still see a person, but you'll see that it's unreal. That doesn't stop you from interacting. It doesn't stop you from being kind. It might even help you to be more kind if you look out and see the intense knot that people have in their minds and struggle they have looking for somebody to blame for how they feel. if you blame someone for how you feel, that just reinforces the whole duality. More?
Hogan bowing, where do I rest or where do I look when it appears when there's just a lot of anger here for the way that other people are acting?
Okay, I understand what you're saying. But if I respond to that question, then I would say, who are these people? So I mean, because I can't be separate from you or for how you feel or for how anyone feels. So if you tell me what's happening with you, I cannot help you unless I identify with that. But it's the consciousness that identifies with that, not a person. There's no one here. Whatever this is as a human form is coming apart more quickly than I would like. But the consciousness is not going anywhere. It does not go anywhere. If you were to die in this room right now, you will not go anywhere. Other people will think you did because they identify you with your body. More.
Hogan bowing, how do I take responsibility when I'm blaming?
That's how it's done. That is how it's just consider what you just said. How do I take responsibility when I can see, I'll add that, and that I'm just blaming other people? That's how it's done. Don't look for results. Just be the crap you're trying to get rid of. Because if you continue to try to get rid of how you feel or get better, improve, you just increase the original delusion, which is duality, Vaita. You just increase this by trying to stop that and start this. Whereas if you just let yourself collapse into that, it can be very painful. But this is what's meant by some practices like Tonglen practice, sending and receiving while riding the breath, taught in Shantideva and all kinds of people, current people, Pema Chodron emphasizes that. Trungpa Rinpoche taught that quite a bit. That's just a way of doing it very mechanically. I don't really teach that. I have some ideas about that are a little bit different. I'm not saying anyone is wrong, but you already do that. You already do that sending and receiving practice in your practice. Well, thank you very much. Is there a question on Zoom? Naveed.
Navi bowing. You say that the path to enlightenment is straight into the darkness.
Yeah.
What is that darkness? Bowing.
So it's darkness is a word, of course, you know that describes the absence of light or the absence of form, or the absence. Another way of talking about emptiness. It's about looking, rather than looking at the right and wrong, or looking at the foothold, or looking at this. We have plenty of those. We have the 16 precepts. We have plenty of footholds. But looking into the darkness is here. You have to look within. You have to go within. And the only way I know of, I'm not saying there are 50 other ways, but the only way I know of from my own life is to hold still and watch what moves back and forth in the mind stream, in the consciousness, and in the hallway, and out the window, and the dog that's walking behind you, or whatever it may be. Just observe the movement. And so by seeing this, eventually you will begin to see into the darkness. And that, when I say darkness, I'm just saying it's a way of talking about not knowing. Seeing that no matter how closely you look at this, there's more and more feeling of not knowing. The downside of that is like darkness. The upside of that is it's nothing but light. But it's not conventional incandescent light or even the sun. It's just light that has no location in time or space. But it's not something you can go after, because then it turns dark. So just look into the darkness. Just a way of talking about it. More questions about that, Naveed, if you have that.
Navi bowing. Is it possible to realize anything without understanding it?
Yes,
Bowing.
that's probably the only way you can realize it. Because if you understand it, then you stand under it. If I use that word in its way it's structured, it's somewhere above you. So realizing something is you don't realize anything, because you're not separate from what you've just seen, understood. You're totally at the mercy, insofar as there's any separation called a me or an I or an individuality. That's gone. It may not have gone anywhere, but it's seen to be unreal. everything starts to just, all the polarities come apart. And you're just still sitting at the table eating your breakfast. But they're coming apart, the past, the future, the up, the down, the night, the day, the pain, the pleasure, enlightenment, confusion. All of that is just comes apart. And there's just this. It's basically called consciousness only, as far as the Yogacharans are concerned. And from the point of view of some kind of Western concept would be it's just ultimate. You see that ultimate truth and relative truth are not two different things. More, Nabi,
Not right now, thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you. You know,
You're divine. Can we get stuck in the darkness?
what?
Can we get stuck in the
You can
darkness?
get stuck in your idea of the darkness, but you can't get stuck in the darkness. Why can't you? It's amazing. It's amazing why you can't. But I can tell you in a couple words. Here, you want to tell
Yes,
me?
yes, no.
You're not separate from anything. Darkness, light, dark, all this is just lots of elaboration on something that is an illusion. The darkness is the light. I don't mean to be sound metaphysical or something, but I'm saying there's any differentiation is a unreal.
You're divine.
Mhm.
I know you don't talk about remedies or antidotes at all, but if we feel like we're sinking or non-functional in a non-functional place, is there anything to do besides look at that?
Well, it's again situational, but I'm biased here, extremely biased. The very best remedy I can think of is to take everything that's happening and observe it. Very simple word, just observe. And in other words, meditate, sit down, hold still in your meditation room, in your Zendo, in your living room, back porch, in your Buick Sabre. I mean, just sit still and watch what continues to trickle along or move this way or move that way. To me, that's the remedy. That was the remedy that the Buddha had thousands of years ago, and that's the remedy that was presented to me by both of my teachers. The only teaching I got, direct teaching I got from was Koban. You don't take precepts, you observe them.
You divine, so we just had a month of Ongo where we sat a lot.
We did. Well, I spent a lot of time in the hospital. I don't know about you. Yes, go ahead.
So if there doesn't seem to be if only meditation is helpful
I didn't say that.
with that,
Did you say that?
yes, I
What
just
did you say?
said that. I said if only meditation
Okay,
is helpful as
Yeah.
a sort of a antidote. And we can't really spend all our time there because there are other things to do.
what's your question?
I don't know. I think I'm looking for an antidote.
Well, do the best you can. It's a relative thing. Some people have children, they can't spend a lot of time. Some people have full-time jobs. Some people have all kinds of, my situation, last year's Ongo, I spent more time in here because I was feeling a little better. This year I wanted to be in here as much as possible. I still managed to be in here during Ongo some of the time. But a lot of time I was in this situation. Just do the best you can. It's the intention that's important, not the result. That isn't something you're hearing for the first time, is it? The intention. Imagine how wonderful that is, if you really understand what they don't have to accomplish anything. But you do have to intend, if you're on this path and you're fully ordained monk, intend to see the truth, intend to save all beings. You don't have to save one single being, but you need to have the intention to do that. That's the vow. The vow that transcends karma. And what is the word karma? Action. And how does that start out? Sit down and watch the very minute action of the mind stream come and go and come and go. So you get an idea that that which arises in the mind and the space in which it arises, and being very cartoonish about this, are not separate. There isn't anything but space. This is totally full of holes. And so are your thoughts, your emotions. They are empty. Don't believe me? Consider it. Consider it for another 20 years. And then if you can't, if that doesn't seem to be getting anywhere, then come to a conclusion about it. This doesn't work. I'm going to practice Scientology or something. Do that. Yes.
True bowing. Is the intention enough even if we're not sitting at all?
It really doesn't matter. But there needs to be some kind of sitting in it. It has to be some kind of inspiration to that whole sitting area. It's like you have to at least get a taste of that, what it means to hold still and not do anything for a while. And you've been sitting for years and years, but there are times when maybe you don't sit enough from your point of view. I would suggest that you do not say that to yourself. I'm not sitting enough. I'll do that. Just be aware. It's about awareness. It's not about accomplishing anything. You may go for weeks or months without sitting at all. And if you were to come and talk to me, which you do occasionally, I would say sit more. That's my job. I want you to spend time holding still and watching the mind crank up falsehoods. So that you can eventually see that that which is observing, saying it that way, the falsehood is not doing anything. It has no status as anything. It's consciousness. Or
Shadow bowing. Does anything get missed if we have a form set up and we're able to just succeed at that for a really long time?
it's kind of a generalization there. So could you give me more of an example?
Shadow bowing. I'm just thinking, like, if I were to set up that I sit from 8 to 9 every day and I just happen to do that every single day for a year.
You know anybody that's done that?
No.
No, nor do I. So, but what are you getting at? Let's go to what you want to know rather than your structure that you're setting up as a question.
Shadow bowing. Does something get missed if we do our practice successfully?
You know, relatively successfully.
Mhm.
Probably not. But to me, and I'm biased here, I can't help it. I have to say that I think we need a teacher. I think we need a teaching and need a community, simply put. And so if you're trying to do this totally on your own, it's not that you could succeed. You could be a great Buddha, possibly. There's no rule that says that can't happen. Did I get close to what you're looking at? More?
Yeah.
Yes.
Bowing in the area that Hogan was asking about. When we see that we're blaming or foolish
Yes.
and then receive that as or say in our head, we're receiving that as a gift. Is that doing too much with it?
Paraphrase yourself. I'm following you, but paraphrase what you're asking about.
I'm looking at that where there's blame. I see the blame. I feel maybe some shame, some foolishness. And then I'm turning towards some kind of softening in that area, whether it's calling it a gift or some other word.
Okay.
Is that doing too much
I
to
don't see
take me
no- I
away
don't
from
see
what's
no.
happening?
No, not the way you're asking me, not the way you're characterizing it. I don't think so. It's again, coming back to what I say hundreds of times. It's about the awareness of that, not about the items that are in the awareness. I mean, I'm not saying I'm approving of shoplifting. Although I've done some of that, but I'm not approving it, but we really need to look at the forms that are rising closely. Rather than leave the form and immediately go to some right or wrong mentality. It just closes off a whole area of consciousness that eventually becomes a hideout. When I say hideout, I don't know if there's anything actually hiding because it's unreal, but it protects a particular area of consciousness. It's very, very painful to look into that sometimes. It's very painful, and certainly was for me in the years that I spent with my teachers.
No.
Yes.
Along those same lines, is it, does it make sense to look at when emotion and blame is coming your way to remind yourself that this is consciousness? Is that,
I think it's individual. I don't think a standard is so good, but if you've been studying this, or that's something you've been contemplating, and there's so many things that are dependent in that area. Someone who's really contemplating, for instance, the teachings of Vasubandhu, the 30 verses, that area is so heavily structured conceptually, but it is pointing to just way out there. What it points at, powerful teaching. So to come back to your question, I'm not sure what is it you want to know about that?
what about, I'm wondering if we are hiding out there, if we can flash on, right, this emotion that's arising and looks like it's being in this direction, coming in this direction. Is it to flash on, all right, this is not personal, this is consciousness.
I think the flashing part is cuts into a little bit the concluding thing, because the flash is something that shows up, you look at it, you don't, it's like a touch and go kind of thing. You look at it with consciousness without a particular reference point, and then maybe that whole thing comes apart, you go back to reference points again. Still awareness. You do not have to succeed at anything. That's a mundane path of getting ahead, succeeding. And a lot of aspects of the spiritual path are confined to that, because we all need to start out with some kind of stair step, some kind of ladder, some kind of provisional teachings, the provisional teachings of the Hinayana and aspects of the Mahayana that have to do with gaining idea, getting ahead, and slowly being less self-centered. Anyone else in here? That's a question. Online, is there anyone online has a question? Isan.
Isan Bowing. I'm curious about Ondo's question, and I would phrase it this way. If someone's mad at me, what is my responsibility? Bowing.
That's pretty general. Are you talking about somebody cut you off in the supermarket with their shopping cart, or you cut them off, or I mean, there's so many different variables to that. And is this your child? Is this your father? Is this your partner? Is this? So if you can create one, maybe I can address that in terms of how it appears.
Yeah, Isan Bowing, I could easily create one. I can think back on a situation where I made a comment to my son, you know me, trying to help,
Yeah.
and he got mad and yelled at me and swore at me.
Oh my.
So what's my responsibility in that? I mean, I've
How old is he?
overstepped, 35.
Oh,
I overstepped.
he's swearing at mom. Huh?
He doesn't do it often.
Yeah. Well, good.
No, he loves his mama.
Yeah. So you don't give him advice very often.
Not anymore. I don't.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there's any standard or protocol for it. It's so difficult to come up, and the world is just full of do this, if this happens, do that, don't do that, don't do. There's all kinds of instructions of right and wrong. And as meditators, insofar as we can, we want to do this as much as we can with awareness, and to be very, very considerate of the other person's confusion, rather than try to fix their confusion, receive their confusion in the form of anger. And this is not easy to do. It's very, very difficult. It's difficult for me. I've been sitting around on my butt for many, many years. Difficult for me to work with that also. So, but just do the best you can. He's your son. And you probably, your motivation behind it is to be helpful to him. It's just that it comes out as probably comes out as a little bit of condescension, and not really being really clear on the difficulty that he's going through there. And that's probably more than likely that's what he's thinking. He said, "You have no idea what I'm dealing with here, Mom." And so that might be his response. And at another time, when he had his orange juice that morning, maybe he would have had a different response. But it's very, I don't mean to be just silly about it. It's very, causes and conditions are just, they're so innumerable that you just can't track down why this happened and that happened and this happened this time, but it didn't happen this time. But I would say awareness about it. Anything else about that, Isan?
Yes, Isan bowing. So with a different person, who is also a family member, but by marriage, this feels much more murky to me.
No.
I feel like there's just something wrong. She just either doesn't like me or there's unkindness
wait.
coming at me.
I hear you. So now be very aware when you express yourself. I'm not mocking you. I'm going to imitate you something. I want you to be aware of this. When you're outflowing, and I'm going to show you something here, and hopefully you will get some understanding from this. She doesn't like me. She doesn't like me. When you do that with the vocal cords, you're actually covering up some part of the consciousness that needs to be received. So you're covering up some part of the feeling. That part that you're covering up is probably really uncomfortable, but there could be some relative truth in that in terms of the relationship that you're having with her. Doesn't mean it will solve the problem. Be very aware of your outflows, whether they're your expression. Do you follow a little bit what I'm saying there?
I understand what you're talking about, and I didn't hear it that time. And I know exactly what you're talking about, though, in terms of the verbalization. I guess it would be helpful to me if you could say more about the cover up. I'm covering up something in my own mind. Is that
So, but just like what I said, she doesn't like me. That's a cover up. I mean, it's what you're covering up there. The specificity of that is not clear as an object in consciousness that we can talk about. Though it may become that way if you look at it closely. It has to be looked at. We have to be very aware of our outflows. What we're talking about here is emotions and consciousness.
I've been looking at it for 30 years, not seeing anything.
That's called awareness. Really, that's called awareness. You may have to look at this for another 30 years and not see anything. But please don't stop. 30 years is nothing compared to what the very nature of consciousness is, which is without dimension. It's without dimension. It's without location and space or time. This is an illusion. I don't know how many people are sitting in front of you at any given time and telling you, pointing at this and this and saying, this is unreal. I'm not saying it's not there and we don't have to respect the causes and conditions that are showing up, the heat, the cold, the shape, the texture. We have to respect that too. But the fundamental understanding transcends all of the significators that are there that we grasp onto, the reference points and so on, that we create some kind of a structure called me and my stuff, my ideas, my world, and how I can keep my money safe or keep my children under control or so that my parents don't embarrass me. Ugh. It's tiring, isn't it? I mean, it's very hard to have, especially to have children who are embarrassing you by their active, by just living their life. They're just embarrassing. Well, they are not your children. They are not even their own. They may not realize it. Be very, very respectful to what your mother's going through, what your father's going through, what your sister's going through. Be very respectful to them. That doesn't mean you shouldn't give them some advice once in a while.
Yes, I'm bowing. So when I can't, so sometimes obviously I can understand and see more about the dynamic. If I just can't see what's going on in the dynamic, I may not ever.
You may not ever. You don't have to look forward. There is no future. There is no next. That's an illusion. There's just this. You can awaken right here. If you awaken right here, nothing else will ever happen.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Shoto bowing. When you say we're covering up something in the mind stream, is that saying the same thing as we're separating the mind stream? Bowing.
You could say it that way. We're shutting some aspect there's something arising in consciousness out because it's too difficult or too painful or too threatening or shouldn't be there. All the other things that show up as something else, an enemy or something uncontrollable or something that doesn't belong. It's difficult. And people, as we go on the path, we can have more and more difficulty with this as you get closer to that big ditch in the dark that you do not want to go into.
Milka bowing, what is the difference between the passion that's just passion coming out of what's showing up and the passion that's the poison bowing?
The passions that are just showing up, the way I'm hearing you say it, are just, it's just emotions. Emotions are fine. Enjoy the emotions, enjoy the pleasure. You can even enjoy the suffering or the pain if you can understand that that's just the nature of nerve endings. There's nothing wrong anywhere. It's just the way the structure is operating to be uncomfortable 1 minute and very, very pleasurable the next minute. There's a difference between a feather and a railroad spike, but not much when it comes to just fundamental phenomena. It's just something in consciousness. Yes.
Milka bowing, do we have to know that difference between the passions?
I think there's some kind of understanding has to begin to show up there from observing and not grasping. It's the grasping, the shutting down, and the demand. It's the demand for something else. Something shows up in our mind or something shows up in our life or in our partner or in our children or in our whatever, any relationship in our Sangha community, in our next door neighbor, in our whatever, and we do not like it. We don't like it. We want to oppose it. So it's not that there isn't some kind of structure there that makes it, validates how we feel about it. It's just that when you grasp it, when you demand that something change, first noble truth, life is suffering. Why? We want something else. Second noble truth. Simply put, that's amazing that the Buddha 2,500 years ago, through looking at his own mind, was able to see just in 6 years, as I understand it. Of course, it's probably 60 lifetimes that brought that understanding to that situation of realizing the true nature of reality, which is nothing is separate from anything else conceptually expressed. Please don't hold back. You have something, let's look at it. Anyone online? Tom or Jill, don't you have a question for me? Come on. Okay,
Hogan Valley.
it's nice to see you. Huh?
Hogan Valley.
Okay, saved by the bell. I mean, the bell of the ball.
You said we don't need to understand Vasubandhu. Do
Yes.
we need to understand you?
Me? Do you? Are you saying, do you have to understand?
Are we
no.
intending to
No,
understand?
no, good question. No, all you have to do is not just because I'm so important, but you have to receive. And it may be good to listen to somebody who's been looking at their mind for many, 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 many years and is here to, with their intentions to help you, to support you to see your true nature. If you see defects over here, go the other way. Trust your mind. You're judging me. That might protect your ego for 3 more lifetimes. Does that mean I'm some kind of an enlightened sage and people that don't understand me are confused? No, it doesn't. It means nothing. There's nothing separate from anything else. That's all I'm saying. It's that simple and that profound and vast. So no, but I would say, just like with book study, you don't have to understand book study, but if you're a student of mine, or if you're part of this community, you need to sit down and take a book out, whether it's Bill Waldron's book, or whether it's Kobunjino Roshi's Embracing Mind, or whether it's Dogen Zenji, or the 30 verses of Vasubandhu, on and on and on, all the things that we've studied. And you don't have to understand it, you need to study it. They're concepts, and for each person to study those, for some people, it's because they are, to say it literally, you're gifted intellectually, so they can grasp those intellect that very easily and move those around and get a feeling of going deeper into their consciousness. Whereas some other person may read that and think, might go in circles and look at everybody else and say, what are they understanding here? What happens? That's both of those situations are consciousness. It's very, very important. This is why we need a Sangha. This is why we have people, I think sometimes, I think Trungpa Rinpoche once said, the people that you meet in Sangha are not people you would normally make friends with. But they're your Sangha, so they're dealing with their mind in a different way. They just happen to have maybe a same teacher more. Now, Sydney, don't you have any?
Navid,
You were saved by Navid. Navid.
Navid bowing. Are knee-jerk reactions stacked up emotions inside of us? Bowing.
The way you seem to be asking the question or are asking the question, I can see where you might be looking at that and see there might be some kind of layering happening there. And so the way you're perceiving it, I would say that you could work with it that way and see that things tend to come up one after the other. Is that what you're asking about? And it's just
Navid bowing.
Yes, sir.
It seems to me that those knee-jerk reactions are so deeply embedded, at least in the body. And I was thinking that if there's any way to maybe, I don't know, get rid of them, or maybe they can be softened a little bit. Bowing.
Hang on, I will ask one of my senior monks. Again, what would you say?
Sorry, could he repeat the question?
She wasn't listening to you? You have to repeat the question.
Navid bowing. I said that those knee-jerk reactions seems to me that they're so deeply embedded in the physical body, and I was wondering if there's any way to soften them a little bit. Bowing.
Come up here, please. Don't worry about it. There's Navid right there.
Hi, Navid. My response would be, I don't know.
There's your answer. Anything else? So what that kind of response, this is the reason I asked Hogan is she's practices Chinese medicine and does acupuncture and acupressure. And I just think she's very, very knowledgeable about working with the body and consciousness and the way those two work together. And so, but for her to come up and say, I don't know, is still a genuine response. And I'm putting her on the spot, of course, so it might be a little bit difficulty, maybe quite a bit of difficulty doing that. But that's a very good question. And if you want to ask me that question again, I will probably respond. And if I can, I will not say I don't know.
Navid bowing. It's been a while since I've been thinking about knee-jerk reactions. That what are they actually? And it seems to me that they work a lot in our body. They're so hidden, I think,
Yes,
that it's sometimes hard to see them.
it is.
And I was wondering, what is the origin of them?
So I wouldn't worry too much about origin of anything, but the very way you're describing it tells me that you're aware of it. And that's the important thing. Awareness is the key word here. Just be aware of it. You're a young man. I don't know, how long have you been meditating? 10 years?
Well, I can say that.
Okay, that would have been my guess. But just keep going. We're not trying to do something like, well, 10 years means this, 15 years means this, but it takes quite a while But the way you ask the question, the way you talk about it means that you're actually looking at what needs to be observed. Now, there might be some information I thought by asking Hogan, she might have something, some response to you that would be more in the form of a support for what you're trying to do. And it's not that she wouldn't at another time or another place or talking to you directly or possibly working with your body. She might, because she's very intuitive in that way. But I would say that what I'm hearing, I'm not hearing much negativity other than your feeling of working with these, this stacked layer of knee-jerk reactions. But it's about being aware of those. So the downside of it is knee-jerk reactions. The upside of it is you're aware of that. You can even say it this way: you're finally beginning to just be aware of what's happening in your mind rather than a reaction to it, or rather than a justification of it, or rather than a cover-up of it. So you're just noticing that, and it may not smell very good.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Wulong.
Wulong bowing. When you have a direct experience of someone that is different. Okay. So in the past, I've tried to honor whatever experience or relationship I am having directly with that person as meeting it where it's at. But when you witness that person abusing, not causing harm, but abusing almost violently, with violence, someone else, sometimes one can hide in the, well, that's not my experience of that person. So what is our responsibility in witnessing this violence against someone and then the person turning and being completely different with us? What I think the question is there. Bowing.
It is. And I would say meet everything where it's at, because nothing is dependable. You cannot, it depends on, when I say it depends, I'm just saying, at the same time, I'm saying nothing is dependable. I'm also using the word depends because it's dependently arisen. There are no separate things anywhere. This is not a separate thing. If you think it is, and if you start to get worried about something, you get concerned about this or concerned about that, or you want to join this and stop that, you will buy into the bullshit. Pardon my, that kind of a word. I don't really have to use that. Sometimes it comes out. You'll buy into that because it's easier to just align yourself with someone who has a position on something. I have positions on things. They come and go all day long. And I'm sure you do too. I'm sure everyone here does. It's when you grasp at the thing as being right as opposed to being wrong. So it's not about getting rid of, just like with Navid's the stacked up feeling he's getting. This is awareness. Awareness is such an amazing elaboration, like petals on a flower. I don't mean to be romantic about it, but it's just like the continually unfolding of this illusion we call relative truth or reality. So insofar as you can, just receive it. Be very tentative about when you add a story to anything that validates it so that you get to hang on to it as an opinion, a judgment, an idea. So you get to turn right instead of left, or you get to go, no longer go straight, but you're going to go this way for a while because of some kind of a judgment or evaluation that has very strong, crisp credentials and prove, you can prove it. It's right here in black and white, and 3 people are all coming in and saying, yes, 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 this is true. He, she, they did this. So I would say, be very tentative about this. Don't miss your life. I've been saying this since I met you. Don't miss your life. That means whatever shows up. If you're a student of mine, receive it, receive it, receive it. This is very hard, and it is not going to get easier. It certainly never did with me. Further,
Wulong bowing is receiving the situation, potentially confronting that person about this violence that you just witnessed. It's a very murky area for me.
Well, the murkiness is awareness. The downside of murkiness is ego doesn't like that. Ego wants to have crisp, strong facts. So he, she, they will talk to another he, she, they, that will substantiate that and say, yes, I agree. Yes, he did. They said, she said this and did this. We'll try to get some kind of relative structure to it. You don't need to do that. You can be alone in the wilderness of your mind. You don't need it. You don't need it, my friend. You don't need it. You're going to die. I'm going to die. You only have one opportunity here, as far as we know, in this consciousness. See the truth yourself. And if you buy into this or buy into that, or judge this or judge that, I don't care who it is. Even if you see your teacher judging. I can go on and on here, but I can get off on a rant. And I don't want to do that. I want this to be about your question. Do you have a further question?
Is the apprehension here the fear of losing a quote unquote relationship in that scenario?
Could be. If the relationship, the dynamics in the relationship are dependent on right and wrong, should be and shouldn't be, cause and effect, success and failure, all the relative areas that most of us run our lives on, most of the world is running on that. You can't do this. This is a spiritual path. It has to come right out of here. If you look to one side and the other side, you're going to find judgment and evaluation, conclusions everywhere. We've been experiencing in our Sangha. It's pretty devastating to me. It's pretty devastating to the Sangha. It's especially devastating to see people you thought would buy into something, they don't. There's somebody else you thought they're not going to buy into this crap, and yet they do. They buy into it and they're gone. Is that wrong? No. Right in the wrong direction. We don't need it. Go ahead, please.
May I ask a question about next Friday's Mountains and Rivers?
Sure. You could wait to them and you could ask me now. I probably won't give you too much right now, other than,
It's not about the content, but more the invite list.
okay. Are you on the list?
Always.
Okay.
I guess my question is, because of all this hearsay, because of all these conversations that you have spoken of, talked about, instead of going directly to the person, is Chiazon going to be present to cut that hearsay down, to give an equal airtime and benefit of the doubt? That's my question.
Don't know, is he? He's certainly welcome. He's certainly welcome. He's. I don't want to get into that too much because
Sure.
I was surprised. I didn't think he was going to disconnect from me. I just was astonished when he fell to my feet, bowed to me, and said, "I would like your permission. I would like your blessing." But he's asking the blessing for someone that later on he's telling people is, I don't know what his words were, but they weren't very supportive. But I'm just saying it's not. He's suffering. He's having a difficult time. I love him. I wish him well, whatever direction he wants to go. I will not have another Dharma error. I'm not going to put that kind of weight on anybody's shoulders again. Not that was the cause of it, but I am responsible for him leaving. If you want to hear that from me, I'm responsible. The first few days after that, I was just kind of shocked. I was just shocked. Why would he leave this teacher who was given a lot of his time to him and tried to help him? So it kind of shocked me, but he's doing what he needs to do. It is not incorrect. I wish him well. I wish him, and I hope he does well. But he's welcome to come to that meeting. Wouldn't he be welcome to come to it? Yeah. I just asked the Sukansu and the Shuso. Yeah, I'm getting yes. Anybody want to give me a no? No, he's welcome, and he's welcome to come to this community. He can come here and meditate. Senchu can come. Rumi can come. We miss him. He was invited to the baby shower yesterday. I know there's some sickness there, so with a Senchu, but there's no warfare going on here as far as I'm concerned. So he's welcome to come back. I know he has some strong opinions, considerations about me, but I'd like to say, I'll say one more thing and then I'm going to shut up about it. He never brought those to me. He always told others about it. I never heard it. He may say otherwise. I'm sure he does. Okay, Kayun, let me have it.
Kayun bowing. I've been holding my tongue this whole hour because I wanted to keep it for the mountains and rivers, and I have to go to a movie and didn't want to cut this short. But I have always given you the benefit of the doubt, and I give him the benefit of the doubt. So when I publicly hear you scratching your head about why your Dharma heir left, and then hearing from him directly about why he did leave, and saying that he did communicate that to you, I am, I wouldn't say happily in the wilderness, but I'm certainly in the wilderness. And so I understand the communication is confusing and it's an illusion, but both can't be relatively true. So,
Okay.
So I'm happy. I'm looking forward to going into this. I think it's really unfortunate, the whole situation. It's heartbreaking for many of us who aren't there, particularly those of us who have been practicing with him for as long as he's been a student of yours. And the fact that your Dharma heir, somebody who like diligently dedicated themselves to practice in the community guilelessly and with kindness, for whatever reason, decided that he had to leave is, to me, a cataclysm.
So now let me say something and interrupt you. Not everyone, your just description of him, you don't live here, but there are other monks who live here. Not everyone would agree with you. I'm not saying I would disagree, but not every person here who has interacted with him. I can name several people that did not get that kind of treatment from him.
I'm expressing my own experience as a person who doesn't live there. And I completely agree that those perspectives will be different, just as perspectives about my interactions with you are totally different because I don't live there and I don't discount other people's points of view. Okay. But my point is that it's a big deal. And I just think it's been a challenging month because of how it's fallen in Ongo, where suddenly it's been like radio silence. And one of the biggest crises that I can remember regarding my relationship to the Sangha has happened at a point where the normal CCC has been suspended because of Ongo. So I think it's only grown in my own mind in stature and become more pressing. So I look forward to having a conversation about it on Friday, and I hope it's longer than an hour because I know I've got a lot to say. And
I'll give you some extra time.
Thanks. And also, I think it would be nice to directly extend an invitation to Chiazan instead of obliquely saying he's welcome to come, because I know for a fact he's very hurt that he hasn't been invited and feels he isn't welcome. And I personally think that, and of course, this is just my opinion, but that a very frank, direct, mediated conversation between the two of you, publicly witnessed and interacted with the whole community, both in person and online, would be.
Would you like to come here and do that?
I would do it if I could afford the airfare, but I would do it.
Okay.
Anyway, you're welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate your candor. Thank you. Yes.
Shadow bowing. Is there a point that we leave our pursuit for the truth for being Buddhists? Bowing.
Say a little bit more about what your question is.
Shadow bowing. I think it was, she practiced with us for a little while. There was a woman monk from another country. She said of her teacher, an admonition she got was that he hoped that she never became a good little Buddhist.
Yeah. And
that's kind of what I'm wondering, when our genuine pursuit for the truth clashes with our idea of what being a good Buddhist is.
Possibly. It's like the basic teachings in Buddhism is don't set up standards. And yet Buddhism is full of standards. The 16 precepts are all kinds of standards. But as my teacher, Kobunjino, said, you observe the precepts, you don't obey them necessarily. That's difficult because you may observe something that you don't align yourself with that. You may do something that may be contrary to what the precept seems to be saying for most people. Go ahead.
Shadow bowing. Is the pursuit for the truth, does that look different than relatively uncovering every dark spot. Bowing.
I don't know. There's only one dark spot,
What is that?
duality. Thinking there's more than one thing. If you do that, then then you're at the mercy of all the polarity in the world, right and wrong, up and down. And the big one, the one that most people don't even see. And if you don't see this, you're going to delude yourself, delude others, cause suffering to yourself, and cause suffering to others. There is no difference between life and death. It just looks like it because you're so attached to this body. You're so in love with brushing your teeth or manicuring your nails or whatever it may be. Attachment to form, attachment to form. You can be in a form and not be attached to it. It's possible. More.
You can wait.
Any final question, especially in the area we're in? Transcending.
Natsumi bowing. How do we work with the fear of non-duality?
That's a good question. Because it's a big threat there. And that threat is experienced personally as that would mean that we don't exist. Because if that is out there and I'm not separate from that, then that situation out there is in this situation of subjectivity I feel here, and the objectivity I see out there, I'm told in the teachings, these are not two different things. So that can generate just through the intellectual approach, which is what you're saying there. But eventually you have to get into the actual the awareness that the awareness in which those kind of things arise. The identity that's identified with subject, the identity that's identified with object, eventually that starts to come apart and it becomes just consciousness only, which it's always been. It just returns to its true nature, as it has been said in the teachings over centuries, just returning to your original face, original nature. It's just consciousness. So the way you do that is I'm biased there, so I say practice a lot, sit down, hold still, watch the chaos, watch the coming and going and the circularity of the mind until you see that which is observing, but that which is coming and going is not separate from that which is coming and going. Those have collapsed. They are no longer separate things in your perception. Just perception only. Well,
Not right now. Thank you.
okay, I can take maybe one question if there is one. Is there one?
Sabrina Bowing.
Go ahead, Sabrina.
How, if you are seeking creatively to write, which is an act of storytelling, which involves identifying with subject and object and rising action, how do you take care to not identify, but also rise to the calling of what you think you're creatively meant to give to the world?
Don't worry about identifying, not identifying. Those are unreal anyway. And if you try to not identify, you're creating a reality that isn't even there. And if you're trying to justify identifying by saying, well, I need to be a storyteller, then you're doing in the other direction. Don't do anything with it. Have a willingness to just write and be lost in space. You write with a pencil or with a typewriter?
Pencil.
Huh?
Or pen.
A pen? Like an ink pen? Ballpoint?
Yeah.
Blue or black?
Black.
Why black?
It just feels better.
No,
Smooth.
it can't. It must look better because you can't feel black. You know,
Maybe.
so just right. It's just, I'm not sure exactly where you're at with that, but my understanding of it, I've done quite a bit of writing. I'm not a writer. I don't think of myself as a writer, but I do a lot of it because it's just another form of expression. I'm very, very interested in expression coming out of consciousness, no matter how it shows up. And so I would say, since that's what you're talking about, I would say just write a lot, write all the time, write as much as you can. Write, I don't know. Any recommendation for her?
Write a lot.
I just talked to Chokadao, who writes a lot, and he said, write a lot. Yeah, you're good. Just, I wouldn't be too concerned about whether you're identifying or not. It's, those polarities are all unreal anyway. So you can't be, if the ideas don't get caught by thinking that this is the only way you can do it or the right way. You might write one thing where you're really identified with the character, and then you notice that you just never get identified with the protagonist or the other person in that. You never, but it's a totally different dynamic. So it's always about consciousness or awareness, not about anything that arises in consciousness, from my perspective as a meditation teacher.
Oh,
I'll be back. We close? Yes, let's close. Thank you so much. Nice to see all of you. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for your questions. I hope to see you whenever something else happens.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jiho san shi shifu, shi son bu sa hoko sa, moko the 10 directions, the 3 times, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna, Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokokoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.
Thank you, Sokuzan.
You're welcome, Cynthia.